Hello, I'm Susan Sarandon. In the previous program of Mythos, Joe Campbell discussed the historical roots of the Judeo-Christian tradition in the Exodus. But history tells just half of the story. As the philosopher Novalis said, the seat of the soul is where the inner and outer world meet. The outer world of history changes with time. The inner world, the spiritual world, is constant to the human race. And it is myth that provides the link between these two worlds. It is one of Campbell's strongest beliefs that our inherited tradition emphasizes the outer world, an historical interpretation of religious events, to the very great detriment of our inner world. The link myth usually provides has been broken. Campbell insists on a different interpretation, an interpretation that can be found in ancient Greece. He concludes this first set of programs in the Mythos series with an exploration of the mystery religion of Eleusis, where familiar symbols of worship take on significantly different meaning.
I've been thinking what aspect of the later forms, we've gone through a long history here, almost 200,000 years, and what would be the best conclusion. And I decided that the Greek classical mystery religions would be the great conclusion. The essence of the spiritual experience intended is that of shifting consciousness from the purely phenomenal aspect of one's life to the spiritual, the deep, the energetic, eternal aspect. And here were many, many rituals associated with this. They go way back into the Bronze Age in their beginnings. And with the coming in then of the Homeric patriarchal warrior people, they moved into the background for a while, but then came forward again. The mysteries of Eleusis, this wonderful shrine just outside of Athens, which was the sacred spot for the Athenian population, has a background way into the Bronze Age. And it survived then in the classical world through Roman times until the conversion of the Roman Empire into a Christian empire with Theodosius. With Constantine around 327 or so AD, Christianity was recognized as one of the permitted religions in the Roman Empire. And very shortly later, with Theodosius, end of the 4th century and beginning of the 5th, Christianity was declared to be the only permitted religion in the Roman Empire, and not only Christianity, but the specific form of Christianity that was that of the Byzantine throne. And so a system of violent persecution and vandalism begins, the destruction of shrines, and the more sacred the shrine, the more violent the destruction. And what happened in Eleusis is an example. Meanwhile, however, in the Hellenistic period, up to that crisis in Western civilization, many of the earlier mystery cults had come back into manifestation. And it's my belief that the great insight that St. Paul had on the road to Damascus was that the death of Christ, of Jesus, on the cross could be interpreted in terms of the classical mystery religions, of the death and resurrection of the Savior, the death to one's purely material, animal existence, and the birth then of the spiritual life. This is symbolized in the Christian terminology with the transformation of the old Adam into the new Adam. And you have the theme, O Felix Culpa, O happy fall, that in the garden, the fall of man into the field of time, out of the timeless rapture, you might say, of Eden, was followed then by the coming of the Savior, who represented a sublimation, a higher manifestation of the consciousness of humanity than that which had been represented in the garden. So without the fall, there would have been no Savior. And all of this is really mystic language from the Greek mysteries. So I thought I would start a run through some of the material of the Greek mystery religions. We actually know very little about them because they did remain mysteries. No one was allowed to betray or talk about what went on in the sanctuaries. We have to depend on outside observations. Some of the observations being those of people like Clement of Alexandria, who were attacking the classical mysteries, and from them we can judge somewhat what the rituals were like. But the best evidence, I think, is in the art, ceramic art and other art, where we have little clues. So I just want to run through some of this and try to convey some sense of what the rituals intended and what their forms were. Now, in the classical world, the planting time was in the fall, and the harvest was in the spring. And then the fruits of the harvest, the grain, were stored in silos in the ground during the fierce heat of the summer for then planting again in the fall. Consequently, the richness, the wealth of the community was in the keep of the underworld, the chthonic underworld divinity, Pluto or Hades. Here is Athene giving the grain to Pluto in his aspect as puer aeternus, the eternal boy. The notion, the mythology, the cult idea was that Eleusis was the place where grain agriculture was first invented by Demeter, the goddess of the telluric earth. That's just a mythological idea. This is not the place of the origin of grain agriculture, as we all know. But for the cult, so it was. And here it is being given to Pluto, the eternal boy. Now, a deity like Pluto, and this is true also in the Celtic stories of Merlin, can be represented either as a youth or as an old man. And here is Pluto as the aged one with the cornucopia, with the bounty of our life in his keep. The notion that it's out of the abyss that life comes is very important, out of the darkness of the abyss, the chthonic realm. And so these cults are very much associated with the death into the underworld and the life again. And this was symbolized through the analogy of the planting of seed and the coming to life again. The use of agricultural imagery to render a spiritual message is what we have here. This is from a vase in the museum in Naples. Here we have the candidate for illumination being received by the Psychopompos, the guide of the sanctuary. Over here stands a figure, and the club tells us who it is. It is Heracles, or Hercules, and we're going to see him in an interesting situation a little on in the ceremonial adventure. Here then, bearing a torch, which means we're going into the dark realm, the candidate is conducted into the shrine. Now here is a sarcophagus also in the Naples Museum that shows something of what went on. And I'm going to deal with it now step by step. First we